So strategy. I want to talk quickly about strategy. Be loving. That one of the biggest things I can say is to make sure that we're representing Christ well in how we treat them. They're used to getting doors slammed in their face. Okay, they're used to that. And so if we display the fruit of the Spirit, we're going to do at least they're going to be able to come away from that door, even if we don't get anywhere with them in Scripture. They're going to be able to come away saying they're not going to use us as a bad example. They're going to like, oh well, that guy was really nice. He treated me nicely. He was polite to me. He was courteous to me, and so on. What we don't want to do is get into any arguments. Not fruitful at all. We start arguing. Let's just go play basketball or fishing or something, man. We're not. There's no purpose in arguing about these types of things. And here's something that I very strongly believe in: that we, as many differences we have, there's a lot of commonalities that we have. Okay, me personally, as somebody who believes in this book as the inspired word of the living God, I believe that. Well, not this one. This one. Yeah, but sorry.
Can you repeat that for a second?
Yeah, this isn't being videoed.
There's no video.
So, but here's the thing: they look at the Bible as though it's the Word of God. I believe that, and I believe in applying those principles to my life. Okay, there are many similarities, and there's a reason why the world looks at us and thinks we're similar, because they see Christians that are just evangelical Christians that are doing evangelism, and then they see a Jehovah's Witness doing evangelism, and they don't know the differences in the doctrinal points. They're not going to really be able to tell the difference per se, unless you start getting to become familiar with those things. So, here's a question: no matter what group of people that I talk to, and this is something that I make sure I start with any cultist, when I'm going to get into a conversation with a Jehovah's Witness, I'm going to say, hey, you know what? I have one question. I'm a Christian. I tell them who I am. I tell them I love studying the Bible, belong to a church, I work at a church, whatever. But here's the thing. I'm not ever going to let a man dictate what I should believe. I'm in the pursuit of truth. And I want to know, are you on that same playing field? I want to know, are you in the pursuit of truth, or are you in the pursuit of conversion? If you're just in the pursuit of converting me, or making your hours, your filling out your hours or whatever, for witnessing hours that you got to turn in at the end of the month. If that's the point of this, then I'm really not interested. But if you want to sit down and talk about biblical truth with me, then I'm game. Let's do this. I would love to invest this time, because I'm in the pursuit of truth. And I make them answer me. Are you in the pursuit of truth, or are you in the pursuit of conversion? And I think they think about this like, well, I'm in the pursuit of truth. They'll agree with me. Every time that I've talked about that and brought that up, I get people to agree with me. I'm like, great, let's go. Let's go from here. Okay? Number two, I just kind of stated this. Be open and honest about who you are. And I'm going to get into a description of one of my experiences with some Jehovah's Witnesses that went on for 3 months. But before starting that, I didn't want to just kind of go scratch my head and hide all my Jesus paraphernalia, around the house to make them to not let them know that I'm really into studying the Scriptures, and that I actually let them know who I am. Like, I'm an apologetics buff. I love studying the Scriptures. I love studying world religions, and part of who God made me to be is somebody who reasons through these things. But I'm in the pursuit of truth. Are you in the pursuit of truth? So that they can't claim that I was deceptive with them. I want to be upfront and open. And if they turn to walk away, and somebody who might be a little less experienced, they might walk away from that. They might say, well, here's some information for you, and I'll send some of the elders to come and talk to you. But most, a lot of times they'll say, okay, yeah, that's great. Thank you for sharing that with us. So I don't want to ever be claimed about me, them being deceptive in that way. Make sense? I always seek to build a relationship. Relationship is the key to being effective on a long-term basis. Okay, and we'll talk more about that in a minute. Here's the thing: with any worldview, you're talking to somebody from a different worldview. Never, ever, ever tell them what they believe. Might be able to tell them what the Watchtower wrote, okay? You might be able to say, hey, this guy, Charles Taze Russell, he said this, and here's the page. Yeah, but never tell somebody, you guys believe X. You don't know what that person believes, but we have no idea how much education they have. We might say something that's like, what? Or our information might be off. So instead of me telling them what they believe, I ask them, hey, why don't you tell me what you believe? I want to hear from you. Give me the insight, and this is how I started off. I started off my conversation with this one group, and I said, hey, I've learned my whole life about Jehovah's Witnesses from non-Jehovah's Witnesses. And ultimately, I'm in the pursuit of truth, and I want to give you guys a fair shake. So I would love to sit down and talk about the Bible with you, and just share with me what you believe. And they're like, oh, well, that's fair. And that's genuine. I want to know from their perspective, how do you reason through these things? Because I can always tell a Muslim what they believe or a Mormon what they believe, but we have no idea how much education that person has or what their actual belief systems are, okay? Ask follow-up questions. Asking questions is fantastic, and then that's an apologetics thing. We see Jesus doing that all the time, don't we? All right? Be mindful of what they call apostate literature. All right? So this book, What Reasoning from the Scriptures with Jehovah's Witness by Ron Rhodes, this is the new cover. This book, according to them, was directly inspired by Satan himself. Okay, because the whole purpose of this book is to try to remove the people from the Watchtower Society. Okay, so it's inspired by Satan himself. So if I were to come to the table with my new NASB Bible and my New World Translation and my Reasoning Through the Scriptures Bible, guess what? Most Jehovah's Witnesses are going to actually, they're told to get up and, hey, don't entertain conversations with people like that. Go. Just leave. It's a satanic presence there. Okay? So what we have to do is we have to put this away in our conversation. They can bring their knapsack with all the volumes of information. And here's the thing. Usually, they come 2 by 2. And so now, you're sitting down with them, and now you're engaging with one of them, and he's telling you this, and you give him a fair point, and while he's humming and hawing, the other guy's like, oh, and he's going through, and he's finding the answer to that in one of his literature, and then you're focused here, and all of a sudden this guy says, hey, well, what about this? Boom. And now I'm like, oh, and then you're getting tag teamed, okay? And they're allowed to bring all their literature, but I'm not allowed to bring my help. And I'm by myself. It's a big challenge, okay? Very big challenge. But that is why, how do I deal with that? I have this Bible, and I'm going to be very careful in picking it up, because this was the Bible that I actually used to use, and I wrote in the margins, that's why I can't use it anymore. All the pages are falling out. But in the margins of this Bible are notes. Every time there's a verse that has to do with Jehovah's Witnesses, I put JW. So when they're going to bring me to a verse, I put questions in my margins of my Bible. Well, sorry, that's a shame. I have to get that rebound. But what I did was I got this really neat new Bible, and I took a photograph of it here. Here's John 8:58. So one of the key verses in showing the deity of Christ in the Bible is a discussion on John 8:58, in the great I am. Jesus is claiming to be the I am of the Old Testament. And so here it is here. And in the margins, and I get this wide margin Bible. Okay, you get a wide margin Bible, and you actually write all this stuff in there. I'm actually putting exactly what that book would tell me to say and ask. I put it right in the margins of this Bible. So when they say, hey, go turn here, I want to show you this, I've got right in the margins next to that verse the questions to ask and the cross-reference verses. I just started actually putting this stuff in, so this Bible is not complete, but I'm looking. This is my cultist witnessing Bible. So when the Mormons, the Jehovah's Witness, they come, my goal is to have all the verses just sitting here waiting, and they say, "Hey, go get your Bible." I said, "Okay." So I go and get my Bible, but this in the back, this Bible, I like to get Bibles that have notes pages written right inside. And in the notes pages, this one's got like 45 notes pages. I'll put all the verses that speak of the deity of Christ, all the different ideas on soul sleep and all these things. So if I forget, because we're not perfect, we forget stuff, no matter how much you study, it's all sitting right there. And this is all I need. It's my reference guide and it's my Bible. So if you have a whole lot of time on your hands, which I'm sure all of you do, that's a neat strategy to have as a tool when witnessing to the cultists. All right, so be courteous and respectful. Okay, don't interrupt them. They're used to art. When you start interrupting people, you're not listening. It's just an argument. Let's not do that. Okay. Here's what we're going to do. This is my philosophy. It might not be the best philosophy, but I think if I'm going to use my time effectively, if I'm going to challenge anything, I'm going to give them, there's 2 points. I'm not going to talk to them about blood transfusions necessarily. They might want to talk about that. I don't know if they do, but I'm not going to say, I can't believe that you guys don't vote. No, come on, man. Let's get to the hard-nosed topics. Let's give them reasons why they should believe that Jesus is God. Or because here's what you can say. I could say that Jesus is God, and I could give them John 8:58, ego, eimi, and we can go into this discussion on the Greek. And then they're like, oh, I've never heard that. Then they go back to the Watchtower Society or their elders, and then they give them this volume of material that the Watchtowers put together that defends their translation, and now they get to go study and so on. But if you can undermine the authority of the Watchtower Society somehow, gently, kindly, lovingly, now if there's any way we can get them to doubt the source of who they're getting their information from, now we're making gain, and I'll show you how to do that with various scriptures in a few minutes. All right? This kind of encounter is also not for everyone. I don't recommend just to any Christian to go toe-to-toe with a Jehovah's Witness, like what it did to me when I was 17. I wasn't ready. What did I learn? I learned that I'm a prideful, ignorant kid, man. That's all I am, And so I'm not recommending to do this just to anybody who would hear this recording. But if you're called to it, this is a calling in my life personally, and I need to be prepared. I'm going to make sure I do whatever I can do. And so take that and pray about it. Pray about how do I want to go toe-to-toe with elders of the Jehovah's Witnesses, because I got to be honest, folks, it's hard. It'll be challenging. And it could be, if you're not strong in your devotion and prayer life, that your faith could get tested big time. And that's okay for your faith to get tested if I'm grounded in the truth. But if I'm not spending time with God, and I'm not praying, and I'm not studying the scriptures for the sake of intellectual gain, but if I'm not actually sitting down with God, not for the sake of, oh, that's a great verse to use in an argument, but rather, God, how are you speaking to my life? And you make that connection with God. If you're doing that, then I'm going to say you have the biggest tool you can possibly have, okay, because you're connected with God in your daily life, okay? One of the things that's a very valuable thing to do is share your testimony. That's something that nobody can take from you. The experiences that I have had with God, nobody can take that from me. Absolutely nobody. And how God has changed my life for the better. Because if I'm part of the satanic movement that worships a false god, and I used to be an adulterous, drunken whatever, and now I meet Jesus, and he's redeemed me, and I'm starting to be sanctified, and my life is looking different. That doesn't connect with what they're told. They're told that it's a satanic thing. And there's covers of these magazines that shows people with drinks in their hand and they're carousing, and they think that the Christians, that they're hypocrites. They say one thing, but they do another, okay? So share your testimony, what God's done in your life. Keep in mind fear of disfellowshipping, okay? We talked about it earlier. If they go home with doubts, don't expect that it's just going to be a one-day thing, okay? Because as Pastor Mike's going to share next in a couple weeks, it means losing everything. It means walking away from everything, okay? You lose your family, your friends, your congregation. You might even work for a Jehovah's Witness boss. It might mean losing your job. Who knows? Okay? It means walking away from everything. Okay? We have to keep that in mind. So we ask questions. All right. Now I'm going to start this series called Ministry Pancakes. And this is a series that I kind of have an idea of writing a book in the future. And this whole idea of ministry pancakes is when you're talking to somebody of a different faith, what we want to do is we want to make sure we love them. They need to know that we love them. Okay? So this one experience that I had, this was back in 2008, these guys, for 3 months, every single Saturday, I spent 2 hours with them in my living room. They knock on my door. Okay, so now my daughter was 4 months old, and she had the worst case of colic on the planet. We were getting about an hour's sleep a night, and we were exhausted. But when these folks knocked on my door, I felt the calling that God wanted me to do this. So on Saturday mornings, my wife would take our screaming kid upstairs, and I would spend 2 hours, in this encounter with these Jehovah's Witness folks. Okay, so when they knocked on my door at first, I was literally, it was a Saturday afternoon, or maybe it wasn't on a Saturday. It was like on a Tuesday or a Thursday afternoon actually, and I was actually on my way out the door to go to my first Ravi Zacharias class. And I was late. I was getting changed, and they knock on the door, and I go up and I open. It's like, "Hi, are you prepared for the return of Jehovah?" And I'm like, "Oh, Jehovah's Witnesses," and I felt this calling to, I want to talk to you guys. I'll tell you what, can you come back? Because I'm on my way out to a class. And they're like, "Oh, sure." We talked for a few minutes, and I went through that whole "Are you in the pursuit of truth" thing, okay? Because if you're going to come back, I don't want you to waste your time, but I need to know. I told them who I was. I told them that I'm in the pursuit of truth in my life. That's why I'm going to this class. And then, if you are, I'd love to sit and talk with you and hear from you guys what you believe. And they go, "Absolutely, we're in the pursuit of truth. Thank you for being honest with us. That you're an apologetics Bible guy. That's so cool. We don't meet many Christians that are doing that, and so we'll see you in a week." Great. Okay, so then I'm like, okay, now I got a week to get ready, and I'm gonna, let them have it in a week, right? So then I go to my Ravi class, and who is my teacher? I meet this guy, Pastor Mike Rust. And in his introduction to, I think it was, "Can you trust the Bible?" right? So the class was, Can I trust the Bible? He gives his introduction of who he is, and he goes, "I was a Jehovah's Witness for 20 years, and this and that." I'm like, cha-ching. It's like, yes. So I came up to him after class, and he recommended, he's like, "You need to go get this book. It's gonna have a lot of answers for you." And I did, and this book is tremendous. So that's how I met Pastor Mike. He's become a great friend of mine, and I just love hearing him speak. I'm looking forward to the 27th. Okay, so I went over this. I let them know who I was. I'm in the pursuit of truth. Wanted to know what they believed. Okay. So now we agreed to accept the Bible study. Now I let them present. They're going to come with with some material. They're going to come with a presentation. I agreed. He said, "I want to hear from you." They presented their material to me, and I'm not going to sit there and keep interrupting them every time they say something little that goes against what I believe. I'm not here to pick everything apart. I want to hear. Listen. That one of the most underused gifts of love or expressions of love is listening. So when we listen, we're sharing love with that person. I care about what you're saying. I value what you're saying. I respect the work that you're doing. I don't agree with it, but I respect the dedication that is there. When I listen, I'm showing that to them without saying a word. Okay? So I made them pancakes. So Saturday mornings they come over, made them breakfast. It's like, "Yeah, come on over. We'll cook some I love pancakes. I'm a pancake guy. Pancakes, a big pot of coffee, and me and the two guys, we'd sit down and have pancakes and coffee and talk about the Bible. I had a blast. I had an absolute blast, okay? So now, also, one of the things that I did was I related to them. How do I relate to them? Well, there were Spanish guys. One of them, I think, was from El Salvador or something like that. My wife is from El Salvador. We talked about the whole Mexican restaurant thing. "Oh, I love Mexico. Oh, La Bambas, we go there all the time." And and now they loved fishing. One of the guys was a fisherman. I love fishing. So there's a relatability. I'm not some demonic monster with fangs. Okay? I'm a human being. I want them to see that. I want them to see I'm a human being, and I can relate to you. All right? We might be worlds apart in terms of theology, but I'm still a human being. We have many similarities. I want to show that to them. Okay? Before I get to the next one, ask them what their mission is like. Say, hey guys, you know what? My dad was a missionary for 18 years. He didn't go door to door, but he was in Africa for 18 years in the mission field. I know all about missions. I'm like, how is it like? You just ask that question, open-ended question, and let them talk. They'll share with you. They're like, oh man, and these guys are actually like, dude, just today, we were at a guy's house today, and he comes out and grabs me by the collar, and he says, if you ever come back to this house again, I'm gonna, and beep, beep, beep. Okay? So get out of here. So they get that abuse. You go knock on somebody's door with the Bible, you're going to get attacked. They get that. They're getting that. They're getting abused out there. So, I can relate to that. I've been persecuted for my faith. Okay? And so I can relate to that. I want them to see that there's a relatability in that aspect to my life. I'll tell you what. One of the biggest things here is in this experience, I thought I was equipped already, and I'm just going to get a few pointers from a book. I found out how ill-equipped I really was to defend the doctrine of the Trinity. I was not ready, okay? But this encounter drove me into studying. It drove me into digging. I need to know. And then they give you this pamphlet that says, should you believe in the Trinity? And I said, hey, do you have anything on that? They gave me this, okay? So I read through it. And there's some challenging ideas in here. So, let's research this. Let's check this out, okay? And it drove me, and now that was, whatever it is, 7 years ago, 6 years ago. I'm so much more equipped to talk about the deity of Christ with anybody because of that experience. I grew tremendously through this experience, okay? Developed a friendship with these two. I mean, literally, throughout the course of those 3 months, I was calling these guys my friends. I mean, they were friends of mine. Now, when I was trying to get them to, hey, let's go to La Bamba's one time. I'll treat you to a burrito or something. Whenever it came to that kind of out of my property sort of experience, then that was when it would always stop. And of course, I invited them to church. They never felt like coming. I was actually gonna go to Kingdom Hall with them once to check it out and see what that was all about, but there were some circumstances that stopped me, and I'll chalk it up to God. But chalk it up to God. Did I just say that? But here's the thing. I'm not afraid of you. We're talking about the Bible, but at the end of the day, I can be your friend. Personally, I'm at least cordial with somebody. There's nothing threatening about me. Okay, that's what I want to show them. There was one main guy. He brought his wife sometimes, and other times he brought one of the other guys from the Kingdom Hall or so on. But there's one main guy that I was dealing with, and he took me through the study guide. What does the Bible really teach? And here it is. This book here. This was six and a half years ago, and Curtis has got is in the same exact thing. He's starting with a pair of Jehovah's Witnesses in his neighborhood on a weekly meeting basis, and they're going through this. It's the exact same way of teaching. They take the study guide and they say, okay, let's open to chapter 1, and we'll read verse 1, and we're going to read word for word and ask. They have these little questions at the end of the chapters, and they ask you the questions. All right, so. If you prefer Spanish, this one says, que enseña realmente la Biblia. All right? So, if you prefer in Spanish. But here's the thing. You know where you're going. So they gave me this. So now I have this. And I can read ahead. And I can check it out. And I know exactly what's coming. Because they're going word for word, question by question. I know what's coming. I can prepare. How cool is that? You don't get that very often with many people. But this is... No matter who they're talking to, if you're a Muslim, if you're a Catholic, if you're an atheist, if you're a Buddhist, if you're a Christian, they're taking you through this because they're not allowed to. They're not supposed to think independently. But no, we're going to use this and go through the same study. Okay. So now, the first 3 chapters of this book, while there are some differences in what we believe, a lot of it is what I'm calling fluff. Okay, it's fluff. God exists. He created us. He wants us to be happy. He created the world for us. Adam and Eve, yay. Okay, I believe that. That there's an enemy that God has named Satan. And now they're asking me questions. Do you believe in the devil? Or, stuff like that. I'm like, yes, because the Bible, and even after I say yes, they'll go back and say, yeah, well, here's some scripture references that talk about the reality of the devil. And so it's all, I'm taking this in. It took almost 3 months to get to the good stuff. Because what's chapter 4? Well, actually, what's chapter 4? It's the deity of Christ. Who is Jesus? Is chapter 4. So, as I'm reading through, on page 33, it's in chapter 3, right before, this, who is Jesus, I see something, and I'm like, ooh, I can't wait to show them this. I can't wait to hear what they have to say about this. Because on page 33, I asked a question, and you can read right from here. It says, this is quoting Isaiah 9:6. They're talking about what's the purpose for God's earth. And there's this guy, Jesus, who we're going to talk about in the next chapter, but he's promised throughout the entire Scripture he's going to come. So they quote Isaiah 9:6, and it says, unto us a child is born, unto us a son is given, and the government shall be upon his shoulder, and his name shall be called ... Prince of Peace. All right, raise your hand if you know what is in that ...
Mighty God, everlasting Father.
Mighty God, everlasting Father. So I'm like, so I circled it, and I said, wow, I can't wait to hear what they have to say. Why did they put ... So I said, hey guys, I got a question when they're going through this, because I know it's coming. And I said, hey, what's the ... there? Oh, that's because the text was getting too long, and they needed to trim it, and make sure that, and I said, really? Yeah, I said, do you know what the ... is? And they're like, I'm not sure. No, that was a flat out lie. They knew exactly what the ... was. But I said, do me a favor. Can we turn there and just check it out? So we go there. And it said, and his name shall be called Mighty God, Everlasting Father. Without going into it, we'll get there. I said, why would they leave that out? I mean, it's not that, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, it's not that long where you're editing out large chunks that are going to be page wasters, okay? That's pretty important, isn't it? That this person that's coming is going to be Mighty God, Everlasting Father. And so why do you think? You know what they said? He said they probably didn't want to confuse people. That's what he told me. Because if people read that and they say, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, that might if they didn't really know what it really meant, they might think that Jesus was God and somehow was equivalent with the Father or something like that. So they wouldn't want to confuse people. So there was the real answer. He knew exactly what it was. And he wanted to skirt that. Let's skirt that, because that's a tough one. Okay? So now, after 3 months of fluff, finally, chapter 4 came. And I couldn't wait, because I had this strategy that I'm not going to go verse jumping and get into this, back and forth. Oh, yeah, well, look at this verse that says Jesus is less than the Father. Oh, yeah, well, look at this one. This says, before in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God. And so I'm not going to get into that back and forth. But I let them go through their presentation and take me through chapter 4. But then I left them with one question. I left 5 minutes for the end. I said, hey, guys, I've always been curious. One of the strongest verses for the deity of Christ, in my opinion, is John 8:58. So, let's take a look. So we go to John 8:58. And John 8:58 says, before Abraham was, ego eimi, okay, in the Greek. What does this word mean? I am, in the Greek, okay? Now, what does their Bible read? What does the New World Translation read? It says, most assuredly I say to you, before Abraham came into existence, I have been. Not I am, I have been, okay? And there's your Greek, ego eimi. The Greek's not in there, I put that in there. But it says, I have been. So, trying to show that Jesus is older than Abraham, all right? So now, what does my Bible read? Here's the NASB. Truly, truly, I say to you, before Abraham was born, I am. Okay? I am. Now, which one is it? And so they're like, oh, that's interesting. And I honestly don't think they'd ever done a review on this, to be honest, because it seemed like a deer in headlights type of thing. And so like, oh, I never seen that before. So I said, what is Jesus trying to say here? Is Jesus trying to say that, is he trying to say that I'm older than Abraham? Or is he trying to say that I am Jehovah God, the God of Exodus 3:14, that he's saying, the great I am is sending you to Moses. Okay, which one are they trying to say? And they're like, oh, I don't know. Well, then let's look at Exodus 3:14. What does Exodus 3:14 say? The New World Translation says, Exodus 3:14, God is in front of Abraham, Moses is in front of God now at the burning bush, and he's saying, who shall I say sent me? And God says to them, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, I am what I am. That's what our Bible reads, has sent you. Okay? Their Bible reads, I shall prove to be what I shall prove to be. Okay? So, I say, well, my Bible says, I am. Jesus is saying, I am. That's the connection. He's claiming to be the God, Jehovah God of the Old Testament. And they're like, oh, well, that's, here Jehovah is saying that he's going to prove to become, or prove to be something in the future. And I said, are you sure? How do you know which one is right? And I gave them the Greek. I just said, hey, the Greek word here is ego iemi. It's really just a present tense. Very simple. It means I am. It's not a future tense, not a past tense. It's just I am. And they're like, I don't know. So now, we kind of just went over this. See, here's the thing. If I mistranslate this from both sides, as the New World Translation did, then we're completely, no one that's reading this is ever going to make the connection that Jesus is making to God, to Moses at the burning bush. Okay, there's never, that connection will never be made, okay? So now, session 2, I leave them with ego, EMI, I am, and so on. They come back, session 2. Then it says, I asked them, I said, do you know that the Greek words ego, EMI can only be translated into I am? And they said that's not true, because here's 8 scholars that translated the Bible, in the 17 and 1800s. That this, like 4 guys are from Sweden and 3 guys are from France, and I'm like, no comment. But so these guys translate John 8:48 into the same I have been as you do. I said, you guys are Spanish, right? They said, yeah. You speak Spanish? Yeah. I said, my wife is Spanish. I'm not. She writes a letter and said, she writes a letter in Spanish and she goes, yo soy salvadoreña. Okay? Yo soy salvadoreña. And that means I am from El Salvador. Okay? Yo soy. And I said, is there any way, if I translated yo soy salvadoreña into I have been Salvadorian, is there any way that could be true? They're like, no, that's false. I said, what if I was in a room full of 100 people and I asked 100 Spanish American speaking people to translate, and out of that 100, 7 of them translated I have been Salvadorian? Would it be correct because 7 people agree with me? No, that's not what it says. It says I am Salvadorian. It doesn't mean I have been. I said, so here's the thing. Greek is not some ancient lost language. There's a whole country of people that speak Greek. And this term is very simplistic language. Ego iemi is I am. Jesus is saying before Abraham was, I am. He's not saying that he was something or that's how old he is. He's saying I am. I'm in the now, man. I'm the God, I'm Jehovah God of Exodus 3:14. And they're looking at that and they're like, oh, I don't know. That's not what the guys back at the Kingdom Hall said. And I said, all right, check this out. Now, I'm not really a grammar expert, so I'm taking this from somewhere. So, this is what I'm going to trust is accurate grammar, because we hashed this out, and we read it through with these guys, and they all agreed to it, but they said that there's other ways to think about it, which didn't really pan out. But in the Greek, the phrase ego eimi is clearly the present active indicative form. The New World Translation, however, translates eimi into the perfect indefinite tense. I have been. Guess what? That tense doesn't even exist in Greek. So they're translating something that like there's not even a tense. The Greek people didn't talk like that. They didn't say it like that. It was a different sentence structure. It's completely false translation. There's no way to make that translation from Greek to English. No way whatsoever. Okay? Any beginner in Greek, if you're going to start studying Greek, would be able to tell that to you. So that's just a commonly understood thing. So check this out. In 1984, and I wouldn't go into stuff like this because now I'm showing them that I'm looking into their old writings, and now it's like, okay, you're really digging and trying to come up with stuff to make us look bad, and they'd probably stop the study. But here's a tidbit for our knowledge. The 1984 large print New World Translation of the Holy Scriptures with footnotes admits that the footnote on Exodus 3:14 in the Hebrew would be rendered in the Greek ego eimi, I am, and then their 1985 Kingdom Interlinear translation of the Greek Scriptures reveals that Jesus' words in John 8:58 are ego eimi. So they have an interlinear Bible just like we do, where it has the Greek word and then the English word right on top of it and so on, so we can see which each word means. They have ego eimi under I have been. So it shows the mistranslation right there in black and white in their own Bible. Okay, so this is what you can ask. Raise your hand if you know what the Septuagint is. All right, the Septuagint was this amazing series of scrolls or documents that were written in Alexandrian Greece when the Greeks had control over Israel, and the Greeks wanted to translate all of the Hebrew texts into Greek so that they could know what they said. And so they had 70 Hebrew scholars or priests, rabbis, sitting with 70 Greek scholars. They get together and they make 70 copies of the Hebrew Old Testament. And what do we have 70 times? In Exodus 3:14, the Greek words that come out are ego eimi, I am. It's in the present tense. It's not a past tense. And then in the New World Translation, Exodus 3:14 is in a future tense. So they mistranslate ego eimi in a future tense. I will prove to be what I will prove to be in Exodus 3:14, and then the same Greek word I am in John 8:58, they translate it into a past tense. Past perfect tense. So it's incredible how much twisting there is going on here, right? So, do you believe, we can ask, do you believe that consistency is important while translating the Bible? I would imagine they would say yes, right? So, in the New World Translation, ego eimi is often used. It's a commonly used sentence structure. And so, the only place where it's translated I have been is in John 8:58. But right in the New World Translation, they translated I am in all the other places. So right in the book of John, here's a list of, 27 verses right there that ego eimi is used, and they correctly translate it I am, except where it points at Jesus and his divinity. They redo it right there. All the other ones, they translate it correctly, okay? So, let's see. And you can point at these verses here in John chapter 8 are pointing not at how old Jesus is, they're pointing at who Jesus is. The Pharisees are not questioning Jesus on his age. They're questioning him on who he is. Okay, so Jesus is answering who he is. Before Abraham was, I am. I am. I'm Jehovah God. And what they do? Immediately picked up stones. Okay, that's significant. Why? All right, so if the Jews were interested in who Jesus was in their questioning, and God claims to be the great I am in Exodus 3:14, and Jesus claims to be I am in John 8:58, isn't it reasonable to see that Jesus was claiming to be the great I am of Exodus 3:14? Okay? You can ask this question. I asked this question. I said, do you believe that the Pharisees were bound to live by the Levitical laws themselves and execute the prescribed punishments in the law for each sin? They would say yes. Okay? The Pharisees were bound by the Levitical law to live by that law and to execute punishments based on that law. Okay? They would agree with that. So, did you know that the Pharisees collectively, so Jesus says, I am, who before Abraham was, I am, without getting together and say, hey, what should we do? And somebody says, hey, let's stone him. Oh yeah, it's a good idea. No, there was no collaboration. It says immediately all the Pharisees picked up a stone. And now, what would happen if the Pharisees used a form of punishment not prescribed in Leviticus? What if they stoned somebody for a sin not punishable by stoning? What would happen? They would be stoned. Eye for an eye, right? So immediately, 100% of the Pharisees present bent down, picked up stones, and now they're going to stone Jesus. Why? Because they knew exactly what he was saying. And I would ask the question. The Watchtower Society view says Jesus was claiming to be older than Abraham. There's no Levitical punishment for being confused about your age. If Jesus is like, yeah, I'm 2,000 years old, there's no stoning punishment for being confused about your age. But what is there a punishment for stoning? Leviticus 24:16. The penalty for blasphemy is stoning. Immediately, knowing Leviticus 24, they picked up stones to stone him because he was claiming to be I am. He wasn't confused about his age. He was claiming to be God. Okay? So now, let's see. Isn't it blatantly obvious that the translators of the New World Translation deliberately hid the connection Jesus was making with himself to Jehovah God of the burning bush by mistranslating the same words ego eimi both in Exodus 3:14 and John 8:58. Okay? How can it be that the Watchtower Society justifies this blatant mistranslation? It is for certain no reader of the New World Translation would ever make the connection that Jesus was making to be the great I am. Now, I didn't bring my wallet, but I was going to grab 3 $1 bills. The next time they came, this is now session 3, we spent 3 whole sessions on ego eimi, John 8:58. Instead of bringing his wife, or instead of bringing his buddy, he brings an elder from the church now, okay? And now this guy's like in his 70s, he's old and gray, and now he's been around a while, and now he's got the suit on, and now I got this heavy hitter in my living room, right? So he sits down, and he says, well, what about this verse, and what about this verse? I said, sir, I'll tell you what, I've got a lot of questions, but I really want this one answered first before we go around. And he kept trying to pull me to other verses. I'm like, no, wait. Before we go anywhere else, you got to reel them back in. Let's deal with this one first, okay? Because we can verse jump all day. We're good at that. I could do that with them, and we'd never get anywhere, okay? But let's figure out John 8:58 for me. This is one of my verse that means a lot to me. So help me figure this one out, because it doesn't make sense based on what you guys are telling me. So he goes, all right, fine. He goes in his wallet, and he pulls out 3 $1 bills. And he says, how many bills do I have here? I said, 3. And he goes like this, and he crumples them up, and he crumples them up, and he crumples them up. He goes, David, I have $3 bills, and no matter what I do, they will always be 3 $1 bills. And he pulls it out, and there's 3 $1 bills. So now we got an elder of the church using this example, right? And my buddy was doing way better than that. He was doing way better than that. And I told him, I said, I honestly, sir, with all due respect, I'm embarrassed for you. I'm embarrassed for you that you would actually take out 3 $1 bills and use 3 items that are bound in time, space, and matter. They all have definite space, definite time, and definite matter. And using those 3 limited items that are created and comparing it to an infinite God outside of time, space, and matter. How can you make that comparison? How is that even, I'm sorry, I'm embarrassed for you. And he said, well, thank you for your time, David. And he said, come on, let's go. And then they left, okay? Now, later that night, I got a 7-page email from my friend. And in this email, was 6 pages of which, 6.5 pages, were PhD level grammar stuff on ego EMI, both in John 8:58 and in Exodus 3:14, giving justification for why they were translated that way. Now, I didn't really understand half of the words that were even being used because it was on a level way above where I'm at. So I was saying to myself, this doesn't make sense. But last paragraph is what caught my attention. Check this out. It read, this is a quote, word for word, that we have to discontinue our Bible study because Bible study is reserved only for honest Bible students. And it has become apparent that you had a hidden agenda of trying to convert us when you accepted the Bible study, signed his name. And I said, wow. I call him up. I said, dude, how you doing? He goes, hey, did you get the email? I said, yeah. He goes, what'd you think? He goes, what'd you think about all the Greek stuff? I'm like, can you explain that to me? He goes, no. I'm like, okay, because I don't understand half of the words that were used there. So, but I'm more concerned about the last paragraph. I'm like, do you really believe that about me? He goes, what do you mean? I said, the last paragraph. When about me being dishonest and all that. He goes, Dave, what are you talking about? I said, dude, you sent the email. Let me read it to you. And I read it to him. And I heard his voice cracking. And he says, Dave, I'm not supposed to tell you this. I didn't write that email. They wrote the email and sent it from my computer. I didn't even know that was there. I said, really? So your name is signed on the bottom, and you didn't write the email, and now they have you saying that I'm a liar? I'm dishonest? Do you believe that? He goes, absolutely not. I'm so sorry. I don't believe that at all. I enjoy our time together. You're one of the most honest people I've met. And just, I'm enjoying our time together. No, please, David, I did not write that. Please, forgive me. I said, dude, don't worry about it, man. See you next week, right? He goes, yeah, absolutely. Okay, yeah, great. So I'm like, okay, so at least I'm going to see him next week. 11:30 that night, I get another phone call from him. Dave, I'm trying to sleep for an hour, man. I can't sleep. Are we good, man? You forgive me? I feel so bad. I said, dude, don't worry about it. Go to sleep, man. We're good. I said, I don't know when I'm going to see you again. I'm hoping I see you next week. I just want you to remember this one thing out of all the things that we've talked about. But your elders are lying with your name attached to it. I said, just think about that for a second. Forget the Greek. Forget the PhD level grammar stuff. Your elders were willing to lie on your name and tell you not to come back. Why? Because I'm dishonest? No, because they can't answer my question. And so he's like, no, man, dude, we're good, man. Please, go to sleep, man. We're good. See you next week. What happens? All right? We agreed to meet again. Never happened. There was a no-show. I call him. He didn't answer. Didn't answer the phone. Hey, buddy, what's up, man? No answer. The next week, no show again. Call him again. Bro, what happened? He answers. He goes, oh, hey, Dave, how you doing? He says, because I'm Spanish and from the Spanish congregation, your questions were too difficult, so they decided that we're going to send somebody from the English-speaking congregation to answer your questions because your questions are too advanced. I'm like, dude, you were born in Brooklyn. He's American. His parents were Spanish, okay? And he said, no, they're going to send somebody. They didn't send anybody? I said, no. That was the last I ever heard of him. Last I ever heard from him, okay? So a couple months later, I called him again, and now his phone number was disconnected. New number, all right? So now, this is what I'm going to do. We're going to go probably to about 4:20. Why don't you guys take 5 minutes and go use the restroom, get a drink of water if you want to stay, leave, whatever. But we're going to get into some fun stuff.